I wanted to ask your opinion of anything you've seen in terms of some characteristics of the scene. You had a recent essay where you talked about the art being made in Bushwick, so do you care to comment?
First off, this is a great panel, and just so you guys know, there's a great Twitter discussion also happening around there you go. So, I think one thing that's exciting me about Bushwick is not only that there are so many artists here, you really do have a critical mass of artists, and you have that density to enable real artistic innovation to happen, but that Bushwick has been able to develop something of an alternative infrastructure of art. So you have an economy of art, an alternative economy of art, through the apartment galleries. And I think it's that infrastructure that, more than almost anything else, I'd like to see preserved as Bushwick evolves, and it's going to evolve. This is not a sympathetic town. It's going to change. There's tremendous destruction. But how do we preserve that element of it while being realistic that this is moving very fast?
I mean, just really quick, there's one of the galleries that's still in Williamsburg that kind of preserved their structure was Hrag, meaning they started out with like a 30%, 30-70 split. The artist getting 70%. They had flat files. Joe stayed in that location. I don't know if he bought it early on, but they kept doing a different kind of model for the art fair. Went to Germany for a while. I mean, there's that's one gallery that actually kind of stayed true and didn't get washed away by the flood of money. And I think that's one of the cautionary tales. If it's going to rhyme, look at Pierogi and not Priska or Bellwether. Who said, Becky said, I want to be with my peers.
Well, the funny thing about Bellwether, you bring that up, it's, as soon as Bellwether moved, I heard stories where she started bad-mouthing Williamsburg. That was part of the thing where it was like, as much as hype builds neighborhoods, it also can destroy neighborhoods in a funny way. So I think we should, I just wanted to bring that up because that's sort of part of the whole dynamic that happens. Now, someone had a comment in the back there. Did you want to just introduce yourself by your name?
Yeah, my name's Lonnie, and I'm an active musician and artist in this neighborhood. I just kind of wanted to, I wanted to say that, there hasn't really been much kind of spoken about the music community and art and how they're kind of really fused in this neighborhood, which is something I think is, yes, I'm young, but I think it's kind of been different, than what I've seen happening in Williamsburg. I did grow up here, so I've lived here my whole life, 24 years. I'm 24 years old, and something that is really interesting to me is the kind of community that has been forming around music and art. I don't know if you all know about Silent Barn, but it was a place that was active off the Halsey L stop for a really long time, and they're very, very, very supportive of music and art in the community, and people would come in from all over. And when they finally, they were actually, they were torn down because of code within the building, and when it was, building code, because people were living there, and because that's the way that they could afford to have shows in that space and art shows. So it was torn down, and then it was, as a result of this, also thieves came in and stole everything that they had. So, and then what ended up happening was they started a Kickstarter and got $40,000 from people supporting them in a couple of weeks, just by everybody that was around and that supported them over the years. They've been around for 7 years, completely underfunded, DIY, that word, completely for 7 years and ran. And it's very interesting to know that a group of people like that can come up with $40,000 in a couple of weeks.
Well, you bring up a really interesting point about whether artists in the community, and when I say artists, I'm including musicians, including dancers, because I think there was a very vibrant, and now I don't hear so much about dance in Bushwick as I used to for a while, but dancers, writers, that type of thing. I wonder whether artists and people in the creative community feel supported by the community, meaning like, do they find outlets for what they need in the community at all? What do you think, Thomas?
Well, there's been a lot of, there's been a lot of places that have opened up that have, you know, bands and parties with music and stuff like that. And unfortunately, the city really wants to close these places down. I'm not quite sure. If there's safety issues, okay, fine, but they kind of any excuse to sort of, and I've had it happen where I've thrown a lot of big events, and we have a sort of a growing indie scene, and you know, music and dance. We do kind of everything, and I'm always terrified that, you know, someone's going to come in and try to shut us down. We've been very fortunate, and I'm very friendly with the police and the fire department, and they know that we're running a safe operation, so that they let it happen. So it is around. It's kind of hard to find some of these things because it gets pushed underground.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think because the city will shut it down if they see it. If people are having fun, they're like, ah, no, sorry, that's too much fun for you. No, seriously. There's no good reason for it. I mean, it's so expensive to do things properly. I mean, you know, my wife and I have invested a lot of money to have a liquor license and to have, I mean, the insurance, forget about it. I mean, it's ridiculous. And we keep doing it because it's you know, we're down in Ingraham, so we kind of really need it for our businesses. So, you know, people don't have to walk 8 blocks to get a cup of coffee. They can go right downstairs. So it's been a necessity for us. But we've also been very dedicated to having a place where emergent talent can have a voice and be heard. Because you can't afford it anywhere. I mean, they're closing all these places, even in Manhattan. There's no place to experiment. And you know, eventually you may end up in Chelsea or something like that, where the money starts pouring in. But where do you experiment, and where do you get to take risks? And that's the artwork that my wife and I have always found super exciting. Is when it's not perfect, when there's sort of, you're still developing ideas, but there's just very few places to have that happen because it's not exactly lucrative. I mean, you know, it could flop, and you know, places in Manhattan can't take that. They don't want to take that risk because they have rents to pay, I guess, basically. So, you know, I think we have to be committed to sort of find some way to keep these creative things happening. It's exciting, it's good, it's healthy, and we keep kind of shitting on it, and I'm not sure why. Because everyone wants it, and you know, when you go to public schools, and schools are always talking about their art development. Oh, we have a great art thing. We have, you know, we're gardening. We're doing all these things. But you know, even if you try to garden, you know, somebody's going to come and give you violations. I'm not kidding. So something has to change where, you know, we're allowed to do these experiments. You know, where there's some support, and I'm not sure what that is. I mean. Right. We've devoted ourselves to doing that, but we take a hit for that. Right. It costs us.
Well, one of the organizations, I think, from my own observations, that have made a huge difference in Bushwick is Arts in Bushwick. Someone mentioned it earlier.
Yeah,
in terms of, I mean, they've done amazing. I think in some ways they almost created a community that didn't exist before, you know, or a network of people that really didn't have any access to each other. In a way that I think few organizations have done in the community. So how about you, Carolina? Do you feel supported by the community?
I don't even know how to answer that. I didn't move here to be part of a community. Okay. I'm kind of a hermit. I'm a writer. I like to go to room by myself. That's when I'm at my best. This is a little nerve-wracking. So yeah, community of writers, community of artists. I don't know. I have a little Charles Bukowski attitude on that, which is being with other writers can be really irritating. I'd rather be in a good environment. So I don't know. I'm probably the wrong person to ask.
How about you, Deborah?
Oh, I love the community, and I feel that the best way to get a lot of communities open an art gallery, which Jason and I did 2 years ago. Now I'm continuing in his space. I mean, we're all mobbed every time we have an opening. You know, artists want to show out here, and I think the Bushwick Star is another great institution that we haven't mentioned that is theatrically based. They have just been thriving, and you know, they're in a shoestring operation started by Sue Kessler and Noel Alain. And I mean, Bushwick has all kinds of creative places for experimentation, and they haven't all been shut down. The artist-run galleries, the theatrical stuff, the music stuff, it's fantastic. I feel very supported by this community.
Actually, I've got a question for the group. Okay. Would be, where's the great places to go?
Can you introduce yourself?
Oh, my name's Steve. Hi. Where's the great places to go dancing in this neighborhood? I mean, ever since they shut down
You know, that's illegal.
Star Space. Yeah. Dancing in New York, the whole cabaret stuff.
Yeah.
It's
Cabaret
illegal
which
to
is
dance.
really ridiculous.
Pretty much.
It's a lovely free country we live in, but don't dance.
Yeah, dancing in New York is always a problem.
So we actually can't tell you, so maybe afterwards.
Yeah, that's right. Give me your email. Paul, I wanted to ask you, because you've had an apartment gallery locally, and you've had it you were part of like the first wave of galleries that were opening and experimenting. Now, have you felt the energy grow? Has there been more interest? Have you, I mean, how would you characterize it?
Yeah, I'd say it's grown a lot, but...
Paul D'Agostino, by the way, runs Centotto.
Yeah, I would say it's grown a lot in the past year specifically. Really, in the past year is when it's been a noticeable, steady increase. But at the same time, when I first started almost 4 years ago, that first weekend, I've never had crowds as big as I had that first weekend. So it's kind of like at that era, this was 2007, no, sorry, 2008. That summer, that big open studios was maybe a big boom of enthusiasm out here. And then it sort of stayed steady, and then in the past year it's kind of been more, I mean, in terms of crowds coming out for shows, that's been a little bit bigger, but there's just been a reflection of the growth in people coming out and the growth of more spaces opening up. You know, for a long time, everybody who had a space out here, we all knew one another, and openings never overlapped unless we meant them to. And then all of a sudden in the past year you start missing things, and it's kind of strange. So, you know, I'd say it's grown a lot, and I don't know how much longer the growth is going to be beneficial to everybody, because a few galleries have shut down recently or gone on hiatus, and nobody knows what that means. And, you know, so that's a significant shift that we haven't really seen too much of lately.
And whatnot is one of the things when Pearl and I had just Brooklyn Fireproof, it was in Williamsburg. We used to have some pretty amazing shows, and people will come up to me and say, "Wow, you know, I just love it here. It's so great. Like the energy's so good, and you know, we have so much fun, and the shows are great. Thank you so much." And I'm like, "Well, thank you for that." But one of the things I noticed, a lot of people wouldn't buy artwork. And one of the things that you can do to keep galleries going is actually buy something. I think people forget, you know, a lot of artists are going to other artist shows, and they forget that someone's got to pay the electric bill. And industrial electricity is not cheap. It's actually much higher than residential. And so you got to pay the overhead. And so as an artist or as a supporter of the arts, just buy something. You know, I mean, it's really simple. You know, it could be $200, $300, but it will help. And I think that's what people forget. They want to come to the shows. They want to see the latest, greatest. They want to talk. They want, but participate by putting your dollars where they are. And you know, maybe you know we have to also keep the prices down and have like $30 art shows and stuff like that. That's possible. You know, a little bit here and there will make a difference. And I think that's one way that people can really support it on a simple.
Yeah, I'm Charles Kessler. I write the blog Left Bank Art Blog. I'm based in Jersey City, and to hear all this carping is kind of amazing because you don't know how bad it could really be. They really don't allow music in Jersey City. It's like trying to have, I don't know, it's a musical or something. But you know, it was Uncle Joe's, which was destroyed a long time ago. It was Maxwell's in Hoboken. That's it. And so there's so much more vitality here allowed, even if it's sometimes they give you a hard time. At least, you know, it's here. And the vitality and the mix is what I'm excited about. Not the racial mix, but the age mix. You know, it's all very young now in Jersey City, and I'm like the exception.
Come to Bushwick.
Yeah, I do.
There's a laser bubble here.
I just wanted to mention that I think it's funny that it hasn't really been touched on. Is I was born in Manhattan. I've lived in New York my entire life for 25. But right now I financially can't live in Brooklyn, which is where I would like to be. Actually, I've heard now that the Upper East Side and West Side are more affordable, which is ridiculous to me. But I live in Lower Westchester, very close to the Bronx and the burbs, but I'm always in the city. I have lots of friends and crash and stuff. But I just think that the funny thing that hasn't really been mentioned is also how music is very, art and music are fused, but like the fashion that is Billyburg and Bushwick is so, you know, it's come to a point like, what about the hipster revolution? Like, what about that aspect? And it's like, that's how, it's funny, because I get excited to like, you know, come to Brooklyn, I can like wear my fedora hat and I can wear whatever I want. It's like, it's got its own vibe, that it's become its own thing. And it's almost like now, it was almost like, maybe a few years ago, it was like, you'd see a few people here and there with that, but now it's so many people coming to Brooklyn and that this area dressed like that. I almost wore my large frames today that are non-prescriptive, but I was like, no, that's true. I was like, that's true, Brooklyn. No, I can't. I just be me, but little, you know. It was just, it's a funny thing that I think that it touches with the art, because it's how probably initially that field started, is many artists made me dress like that, and it got picked up, and it's just, you know.
Well, I think the interdisciplinary nature of the scene is pretty evident. I mean, I think at least, I think a couple of us are saying with the music and the fashion, I think that's something that in Bushwick seems to be almost like normal. I mean, everyone's doing something interdisciplinary, but I don't necessarily think that's only unique to Bushwick. I think that's been part of a lot of art scenes in New York for the last 3 decades or so.
Plus, I think Bushwick is also, Bushwick is riding this tide of Brooklyn is so amazing. Come to Brooklyn. Right. You know, it's like, brand. Yeah, when I first moved to New York, like living in Brooklyn was not considered amazing at all. I lived in Coney Island, so it was like.
I was upset when I had to move to Brooklyn.
All my friends were like, "Why are you moving to Brooklyn? You should live on the Lower East Side." And so it was like, so I think Bushwick has benefited from this wave of
totally.
hype.
Oh, the hype.
But Bushwick has something that I haven't seen in other scenes, especially not in Manhattan, which is this collaborative spirit. We haven't mentioned the C word, the collaborative thing, which I think is really what accounts for a lot of the good feeling that exists here between artists. I don't think we're all out to kill each other and step on each other to get to the top. I think there's a lot of artists helping other artists, and that's really a neat thing.
Well, I think when there's money involved, though, that maybe that killing will start happening. You know, it's like when there's a lot of money, I think that's when the things change. You know.
I'm Botanic and the Bushwick Beer Garden, and I guess I just want to go back to what you, Paul, said. There's something about like the openings on different nights and things like that, and just the thing I've sort of emailed with Jason about is like talking about collaborating. Maybe like if there were neighborhoods like at the Morgan stop or the DeKalb stop or whatever, where galleries like shared a night for openings, like first Thursday or first Friday or something. I feel like that would be a good sort of way to make people who maybe work in Manhattan come back to Bushwick and sort of have a critical mass and things like that. I don't know if anyone thinks that's a crazy idea. Or
Jason's kind of done some programs like that for about 3 years now.
I can comment on that. I'll comment on that.
But just let me say one thing. I guess that's part of the last part of this conversation, because we've sort of running out of time, is sort of what infrastructure do we need? What, do we need more? Do we need more of these sort of organizations so that sort of thing happens? I mean, Katerina's written for Hyperallergic. She writes Bushwick Daily. I mean, she comes across spaces that I haven't heard of. You know, and I come here pretty regularly, and she'll be like, oh, you know, there's this new gallery, and then I know people who live down the street from there that didn't know that space existed. You know, and it's like it goes pretty fast. Sorry, go ahead, Jason.
Well, I think the death of the neighborhood is organization. I think that the beauty of Bushwick is this organic feel, and I think that's the one thing that kills Williamsburg is their gallery nights. I think the spontaneity in Bushwick is what keeps it alive. I think people discovering something like you just did, you stumble upon it, is what keeps people interested in coming here. I mean, Debbie and I worked for a long time to bring people out on brunches, to take them to tours, to introduce the neighborhood that way. They're still not going to come back even if you send them a flyer and you say every Thursday come out to Bushwick. They're just not. And so that's all I had to say about that.
But I would just say to that, I mean, I don't think we could organize everyone if we wanted to. It's like herding cats, right? Like,
Yeah. Well, that's why Feet Night works, because it's
Yeah.
one night in the spring
Right.
and one night in the fall, and people just...
We had a comment over there.
Yeah.
Sorry, the gentleman in the... Yeah.
I think this neighborhood is, Julian, it's kind of, it's gonna go. You can't stop the money flow, and you can sit here and talk about the beauty of the art industry, I think somebody said, but like every other neighborhood that got gentrified over, and I will use the G word, like Dumbo, Soho, any of them, it's gonna happen because nobody here has enough money or influence that I know, or at least they're not speaking up, to offset the people who are gonna come in and build out, tear down shit, and buy up everything. And they will, because it's gonna get cool. And as soon as all the inner city people start coming in to party, looking for the fun places to dance, that's when all the businesses are like, hey, I can make money on this. And the good way to look at that is that a lot of gangs and drug dealers in this area look at all the influx of the white young people coming in the area, and they're like, money, and they fight over the territory. There was a gang war last year. Did anybody know that? There were a lot of bodies. If you followed the police reports, like the online free sites that tell you when people got shot, there was a lot last year, and the year before that, and the year before that, and it's actually calmed down a lot because the economy, I assume, and people are actually maybe leaving, but we're not spending money on weed. I don't know. But as soon as it picks up again and the parties start happening and the businesses start seeing that this area is viable, they're going to buy back in, and they're going to buy up all the turf, same way the drug dealers want it, and they're gonna tear the shit down, and the artists are just gonna get pushed out farther and farther. I kind of see the art community as being this roving tribe that just moves from the cheap area to the next cheap area to the next cheap area, because the city doesn't want to back us up, and the MTA isn't going to either, because we have nobody up there speaking to them, and they're not going to listen because we don't really offer anything that gives much to those communities in the area that were here before the young artists. We offer art, and it's not much community.
Well, I mean, I actually did ask the Department of Cultural Affairs last year when it was the subway had shut down during Bushwick Open Studios. What could we possibly do to change this? And the response I got from them was, you have to prove that you generate money. You know, at the end of the day, you have to prove, like, somehow you got to do some sort of study. You have to create like this sort of sense that, like, you know, the city would have, you know, made sure the L was running that weekend. If they knew that, you know, the arts community in Bushwick made $50 million a year or whatever. I mean, I'm just saying.
That's the PG answer, though.
I'm sorry?
I think that's just the PG-rated answer they're going to give you, because the stuff that's done behind the curtain, where the people are making huge donations to city officials to make sure that things are done the way they want, and who are along there with the MTA, and there's just nobody in the art community that's for the nonprofits parts of the arts. And those parts, they just don't have enough voice or enough money to offset those infrastructure people that bring in millions and millions and millions of dollars. And there's no state funding that's going to go to one source, you know, to back up the arts anyway. So it's kind of, I hate to make it sound like it's like a foregone conclusion, but it's going to go that way, and you might as well just start coming up with like plans to,
So
like Burr said, to be self-sufficient. What did you say? Self-sufficient little businesses that, yeah. That's pretty much how it always kind of goes, I feel like.
So what keeps you here?
I just make art, and I'm going to move on right from there. I have nothing to offer to that. I mean, I don't tell kids to come in from the schools to come to my studio, because I don't offer anything that would appeal to those communities. These communities are, you know, mostly Hispanic, and they want things like education for their children or religion, and especially the ones who are undocumented, because that's what they're used to in a lot of third world countries or second world or whatever. And I don't think that the New York City art industry is really offering God or education to these kids, and they're not going to get it anyway. You know, and there wouldn't be enough of it to go around if there was there. So it's kind of all sounds really nice, and I really feel like we were going to confront some things tonight, and it would be like all cards on the table. Let's talk about the hard issues, but it's been mostly like, it seems, just talking about the nice things that have happened, but that will change inevitably.
Well, I don't think we ever said it wouldn't.
Yeah, I'm just kidding.
Well, I think it's more of a, you know, I think there's been a lot of interest. I think Carolina touched about the sort of, you know, the hype of Bushwick and all these types of things. And I think it's a little bit of, I mean, I have to say, I come here all the time, and some of these things, you know, the building codes, this is new to me. There's some information here that's been new to me today. And, you know, whether it's the community board, I mean, I know Deborah, but a lot of these things, I mean, I think it's just about sharing information at this point. I mean, I don't think one event is going to do that. But I think we're going to, yeah.
Actually,
So,
let me jump in right there.
Yep.
First of all, I want to say we need an immediate and enormous round of applause for Hrag and It's to be solved by the people here. Briefly, I want to say that I think there's a lot more to cover, but it's fundamentally impossible. It's 5 or 7 of 9, and I think everybody needs to go take a break and go drink at Pine Box or Brooklyn Fireproof or any place nearby. You know, support your local tavern. I'll say that we'll be at some point uploading the video, and other people will have links, so you'll be able to see more of what happened tonight. Please feel free to comment online to all the people here tonight, and we'll see you soon in the future for parts 2 and 3 and 4.